Hey, what's up, everybody out in YouTube land? How's everybody? If you are out there, go ahead and let me know. Throw a comments. I see Steven's there. What's up, Steven? Yeah, so if you're out there, it's always nice to know who I'm talking to, so I can make fun of y'all. So yeah, whoever's out there, say hi in the comments. It makes it easier for me. Today we're going to be talking about Lightroom, obviously, but more specifically about catalog setup, some preferences you can make, how to make things fast and secure. I guess that's kind of the long and the short of it, of what we can do to make sure our edits go as fast as possible, but then also make sure that the files are going where they need to go, all our hard drives are set up correctly, and all of that kind of thing. So yeah, if you have questions about catalog's performance, all that good stuff, go ahead and throw them in the comments just so I can answer them as we're going. Or if you have any other questions, I'll take any questions today. This one's a little bit drier than normally, but I think it's important. It's probably you could argue it's as important as calibrating your monitor, but if your file's in the right place, it's going to set yourself up for success. It's definitely a foundational brick that we're building today. It's a foundational step to even just as a sanity check, be like, okay, cool, I'm doing the right thing. I think both of those things are important, right? Just, we're all doing our own things. We find things that work for us. And so if we can find that one aha moment, be like, oh yeah, there was one thing I could do to make my workflow faster, better, then it's worthwhile. So yeah. So I see 4 people are on, and I only see 1 person in the comments. So I don't know who else is out there. But if you are, what's up, everybody? Yeah, I'm Josh. Thanks again to our Patreons, patreon.com/azulox, just like the tag behind us. They are what powers all of our live streams. So if you want to help power these, sign up. We have tons of great articles behind the scenes. We do a podcast, we do these, and it's all supported by our amazing Patreons. So thank y'all. It really means a lot. We just dropped a new podcast episode yesterday. One person already told me that it made them cry. So I think that was the right response. It was very it was an emotional one, but it kind of just hit some buttons as a creator that you might feel like we're talking about you, even though we weren't. It's very much like creator to creator. Also, if you have suggestions for podcast, please throw them to me. I'm happy to meet people outside my circle. A lot of the first couple have been people that I've already known, but yeah, we're getting up into almost into the 20s now of how many we recorded. So yeah, send me some suggestions. I always appreciate learning from other artists about their business. So that'd be great. All right, enough of that out of the way. Anything else coming up? No, Christmas is coming up. Oh, next Tuesday, we're going to be doing a before Christmas Josh Says Mean Things. So you have a week. You have 1 week. We're already starting to get files in. I'll be announcing it on the Patreon tomorrow, but we have 1 week and we're going to be doing a Josh Says Mean Thing. So hopefully y'all been going out and shooting. I've seen a lot of y'all going out and doing stuff. So send me a file so that we can start getting that together. So yeah, Josh Says Mean Things next Tuesday, 7:30. Yeah, I think right before Christmas we'll be a Scrooge. We'll be really mean, right? Just to make sure that I'll balance out all the cookies and sweetness you're gonna eat. I'll be the balance. I'll be the sour to that. So we'll have fun. All right. Let's see where we are today. I actually made a presentation for y'all today. Crazy, huh? All right. So here's what we're gonna be talking about: Lightroom Catalog, performance, and backup. Okay. What's up, Omar? What's up, man? Yeah, Josh is mean. That's a great hashtag. I am mean. Not really, but you know how it is. So yeah, we're going to be talking about Lightroom Catalog's performance and backup. Yeah, so let's just get right into it. How do we set these things up? Where should everything be? All right, so let's break it down into kind of the Lightroom side of things. Okay, let's talk about Lightroom side of things first. Your master catalog, which is kind of where the database lives. It's not where all your photos live, but where the database itself lives. So first up, that needs to be on the fastest drive you have in your computer. Preferably it's on a SSD drive because it's the one making all the calls. Okay, it's the one that's calling back and forth. Okay, so first thing first, your catalog on a if you're on a desktop, an internal SSD drive. If you're on a laptop, just your main, hopefully SSD drive. Hopefully your laptop has SSD. If you don't have an SSD in your laptop, then you might want to consider that. So that's kind of the first place. And this came about. I was talking to somebody at Precision that was at one of my classes, and they're like, "Oh yeah, my catalog's on like a local spinning drive, like an external drive." And I was like, "Man, that's probably why you're having problems." So just that first part, let's get that done. Second, and I'll show you this in a second. I'll be flipping back and forth, but there's a cache, and by default, Lightroom sets it up to be 1 gig, which isn't very much at all. That's like 10 photos for me, and so we want to increase that cache from 1 gig to somewhere between 20 to 40. I think mine's at 30 right now. Let's take a look. So let's flip over to Lightroom real quick as soon as I find my mouse. Okay, and the where to find that is we're going to go to Edit, Preferences. Okay, and then in Preferences, it says Camera Raw Cache Settings. Okay, and so for me, I just have a folder on my local drive that's called Lightroom Cache, and right now I give it 30 gigs. Okay, the default is 1, so I'm giving it a 30 times, and so that's really going to help kind of preload all of your preview files. Okay, so this is where it is. You will probably have to reset Lightroom after you make this change, so I'm not going to do that right now. I don't do any video, so I mean not on Lightroom. And so I just leave that at 1. So it doesn't matter to me. You can determine where you want to put this. It's recommended that you set it up as in the same drive as your catalog. That's what's recommended by Adobe. Up to you where you put it. So the first thing I would do, honestly, even more, 40, 50, as long as you have the hard drive space for it, I would build a big cache. So again, we go to Edit, Preferences. Okay, so that's kind of the first step that we're going to do, and that's really going to increase the speed of Lightroom for you. Okay. The second thing, GPU. So what the GPU is your graphic card. Okay, so there's graphic cards are getting faster and bigger. And Lightroom is being optimized more and more to use those GPUs. When it first came out, I didn't use them at all. And now, starting in 2018, it's starting to use them. And every update, they're using it more and more for more and more tools. Especially, oh, I can make this bigger. Yeah, hang on. Let's go to Present. Here, is that better for you, Steven? So the second thing is the GPU. So assuming that your computer has one, which most do, this is definitely an area to upgrade, is going to a discrete graphic card. And so where that can be found is, again, under Edit, Preferences. And now they have a couple settings here. So we're under Performance tab of Preferences. Okay, so we have 3 choices. So we can either say no graphic processor, we can have auto, or custom. Okay, and for custom, for me, I have an 8 gig GPU. It's now the 2nd generation back of NVIDIA's, and so this really makes a difference in the radial brush, the brush tool, the gradient tool. The other place this makes a big difference is if you have a higher resolution monitor. So if you're starting to use like a 4K monitor, 5K monitor, this really makes a difference. I have a 1440 monitor, so my resolution is 2550 by 1440, and so it's called a 1440 resolution. So it's kind of like halfway in between HD and 4K. But this is really where you're starting to notice it. As it has to push out more and more pixels, the GPU becomes more and more prevalent. Okay. This is for Lightroom Classic. right? Because Lightroom Cloud CC, all the processing is being done elsewhere. Yeah, so this is for Lightroom Classic. Some of the other stuff will matter, but this is for Lightroom Classic. I should have said that. Lightroom Classic to me is kind of the power users Lightroom, whereas Lightroom CC, the cloud version, that's kind of more like multi-screen. The work travels with you, and so you're trading power for flexibility, and that's kind of the trade-off. So, okay. So for me, custom, and I want it to use the GPU for as much as possible because I have a good one, and I want it to use as much as possible. So that's another selection. All right. So some other things that we want to do. I don't want Lightroom trying to guess all the faces in my photos. I don't need that feature. So I want to disable that. I also want it to turn off location lookup. If it starts, just exit out because that will degrade performance. So we want to make sure that we're not, especially on big edits. If you know you need it, go for it. But if performance is what you're after, disable that. The other thing is getting rid of smart previews. I don't use smart previews. It used to be a workaround in the earlier versions, but now it actually degrades performance. So I'll show you where those two things are. The other thing you can do if you feel like your catalog is working kind of wonky, you can also optimize catalog. So let me show you where that is. So if you go to File, okay, and then right under New Open, it says Optimize Catalog. So it's basically like the second selection. There's Optimize Catalog. Depending on when the last time you did it, it might run for a while. But this is just checking on like the file dependencies. It's getting rid of some of the older cache files. It's just kind of cleaning up everything for you. So you should notice a performance improvement after optimizing a catalog, especially if you haven't done it for a while. Okay. So those are some of the preferences that I recommend for performance. They can, again, be found under Edit Preferences, Performance. Okay. The other thing that will help if you have a good multi-core CPU is down here, Generate Previews in Parallel. So it's trying to, instead of doing it sequentially, it will build previews throughout the data set instead of doing it sequentially, and so that will work better for multi-core CPUs, which most of them are now. So you'll want to have that as well. Okay. Anything else we want to see? Just trying to see if there's any other quick. Yeah. Nope. Okay. And then once you get done with that, you would want to restart Lightroom so that those take place. Okay. All right, so that's some of just the software. My bonus tip here is developing an import preset for each camera. I just think as a workflow thing, I use two. Right now, I basically use two cameras, a 5D4 and an R6, and you can set it up to when it recognizes that camera, that it applies like a basic edit. So I have it do like a basic profile, like a little bit of vibrance, and just some basic things, nothing crazy. But that way it kind of sets me up all ready to go instead of having to always go back and select a preset. It'll just build it as it's building out the preview. Also, when I'm shooting tethered for products, I have import presets for those as well. And that really allows me to work very quickly. So by the time I go to look at the files, everything's already loaded up. All right. Okay, so let's talk hardware just a little bit, right? Again, this is for Lightroom Classic, which is kind of the performance one, not necessarily CC, but this is just good information. First of all, RAM is kind of your bottleneck. More RAM is better. The more you can stuff in, it will keep using it. The more that Lightroom can use RAM, the better it will work. My laptop, I have 16. It's pretty good. That's not necessarily my workhorse. My desktop that I'm running on now has 32. And that's kind of you're really going to see it smooth there. Past 32, it'll be better, but it probably won't be noticeable as much. The jump from like 8 to 16, very noticeable. The jump from 16 to 32, kind of noticeable. Past that, it helps, but it's the performance jump isn't as big. Okay, second, SSDs. You're going to want to use SSDs. for editing, not necessarily for the archive process, but for the actual in develop module, right? You're applying filters, you're applying radial brushes, all of those tools. You're going to want SSDs where possible. Now you can copy to 2 locations at once on import, and I'll talk about that in a second. But where you can, SSDs are kind of the gold standard for speed and performance. All right. And then to go along with that, where you can, again, internal drives are much faster than USB external drives. External drives are great for archiving, but I wouldn't want my files to be running on there live during develop. Does that make sense? So in Lightroom, when you go to import, so if we go to file import, this is kind of a little known place. But over here under file handling, there's another one where it says make a second copy to. And so I utilize this if I want to back up on the fly. I will import to my internal drive. And then if I'm in the field, I will also make a second copy to a external drive so that I'm backing up. So the files are getting copied from an SD card or, whatever from my camera. So they go both to my local and to an external drive at the same time. So you just hit this toggle right here where it says make a second copy to. Okay. And so that's how you can import to your local drive and external all at the same time. They're starting to help more and more. I don't know. I don't think they're necessarily taking huge advantage of these like GPU cards that just came out, which are just monstrous and like $1,000. I don't know that that's going to be where you are, but like, a second generation. So like a 2000 series NVIDIA is probably going to be really good for you. That's I think that's the sweet spot of price and performance right now. So like a 2070 or 2080 NVIDIA is probably going to be a really good performance upgrade if you don't have a discrete card in your desktop. Again, for CPUs, more cores are better. After about 8, you're not going to see a ton of improvement. So 8 physical cores is kind of about where Lightroom, you start noticing it doesn't help as much. So 8 core CPU is probably what you're going to look for if you're going to build out a new machine to run Lightroom. And if you're on a laptop, I use a laptop a lot as well. Make sure that when you're really sitting down to edit that it's plugged in, which is weird to think about, but the power profiles when it's plugged in, it can ramp up the voltage of the chip versus running on a battery saver mode where it's throttling that CPU. So if you're going to be doing an editing session, when you can, plug it in because you're going to get a lot more performance out of a laptop just because that's how the power profiles work. So you want to get as much voltage into your chip as possible, and it's going to run higher when it's plugged into the wall versus when it's running on a battery. It's just the way it works. Yeah, SSDs make a huge difference. They're like 100 times faster than spinning drives. So the way to do that, you can have a smaller SSD that's kind of like what you work on, but then everything can get archived to bigger, slower drives. So that's kind of the workflow. All right, so I'm going to talk about, I'm going to see if I can get me in there. Oh, now you can see me. What's up, guys? Hey. So this is going to be weird talking about Lightroom, but how you shoot also matters. Okay. How you shoot also matters. All right. So for me, shooting consistently, is a huge advantage in Lightroom. Okay. It's going to make your life so much easier. It's going to make your editing so much faster. And what I mean by shooting consistently is I don't care if I'm wrong as long as I'm wrong exactly the same from photo to photo. So let's take a look at, I shot these Saturday. We were shooting a trail race. And so let's just kind of take a look. So like this whole set here, I know I'm kind of scrolling fast, but this whole set, the settings were exactly the same. Okay. I didn't change settings. ISO 800, 1.6, 1,000th of a second. Okay. And if you notice all the way down, right, I didn't change 1.6, 1,000th. Okay. So that for that entire set, I didn't have to make it. I didn't change. Okay. Now when the light changed, I went, but then I moved later on. I moved to this setup. Okay. And these are my settings, right? ISO 100, 1.4, 1/5000th of a second. And I didn't change them for like this whole, right? How many files is that? For 140 files, I didn't make any changes. Okay. And so all I have to do then is edit one photo, right? Do whatever photos I want or whatever adjustments I want to do. And then I can just hold shift, select all of those and hit sync. And then I can sync that setting across all of them and I know they're done. Okay. So in terms of getting through your work quickly, shooting consistently to me is like a huge part of it. Okay. Huge part. Once you're locked in, you know, it might take a couple shots to get locked in, but once you are, it doesn't have to be perfect. As long as it's the same settings and you're shooting with the same direction of light, you don't have to make any camera settings. The light generally isn't changing that much. So shoot consistently, aim for consistency, and you're going to notice your editing times are going to decrease because you're not going to have to make as many changes from photo to photo. Yeah. Okay. That's a big concept to get across. And this is another one that people like question me on, but I've literally never had a problem with it. Deleting camera. When you know you miss a file or like you took a picture of your foot accidentally or whatever, right? The flash didn't fire, you missed focus, somebody walked in front of you, whatever it is. When you know you miss, just delete. And I'll tell you in a minute why that's important, but it's okay. You can do it. There's nothing wrong with that. The other thing that I like doing a lot is rating in camera. So both my cameras have a rate button on the back. When I know I hit something, I just rate it really quick. And the reason I do that is when I bring it then into Lightroom, I can just filter on that star. So I can just like say, hey, oh, I didn't do any of those on that shoot. But I can just filter it very quickly, right? So imagine that I did it on, I don't know, this photo because I like the backlight, right? So then I can just filter, and then I can just filter, and I know to edit that photo, and then because I liked it in camera, that edit will probably be the one I edit so that I can apply to the other settings, okay, to the other files that are like it. But yeah, rating in camera. I know Nikon can do it as well. I don't know about Sony. I don't know if they can or not. I'm sure they can. I don't know how streamlined it is, but I'm sure you can. But rating in cameras gives you a good, like, hey, go back and look, especially like on a day like today when I took 1,125 photos. It's nice to be able to go back quickly and see maybe the 5 or 6 photos that I rated, and those will be good starting points to start my edits on. All right. And then profile your camera. I know I say this all the time, but it's just very important. Getting the right profile. Let's take a look real quick. So this was shot with the R6. So this is my profile version. Look how different it looks than when it's just the Adobe standard. Look at the yellows. Ugh. Look at the blues. Okay. Can y'all see that? Dull, not dull. Okay. So profile your cameras. And that's just going to make your starting spots for your edits that much better. You're not going to have to push the files as much in post to get to what you want because you're starting from a better starting point. Okay. Cool. All right. Let's talk about my workflow. So on import, right, when I go to the import dialog box, right, so if I go to File, Import, and I have my SD card on my computer and it brings this dialog box, I'm going to give it a once through and uncheck any that just don't make sense, right? So, again, maybe I missed deleting it. So, right, I might want to be like, oh, I don't want this one. I don't want this one. These are all fine. I don't want that one. And so I'm just going to give it kind of a once through before I go to import. Because once it hits my hard drive, it's going to get backed up. And so if I can minimize how many photos hit my hard drive without deleting ones I actually need, it's going to make my import faster, it's going to make my backup faster, and it's going to make my processing and exporting faster. Okay? So we really want to limit We want to try to be like a strainer, right? We want to get rid of all the fluff that we don't need and only bring in what we're going to use. And so for me, of what I shoot, by the time it hits my hard drive, it's already not necessarily cold. It's not that fine tooth of a comb, but I've definitely gotten rid of like 15 test shots. And the time my foot, I accidentally hit the trigger button or whatever, or the flash didn't fire. All those I've gotten rid of. And so then, because once they're on my hard drive, immediately they get backed up. Okay. So I really want to limit how much I bring in. Does that make sense? Yeah, I know. I make tea, but I don't drink coffee. I'm hyper enough. This is on Waterloo. I'm this hyper. So coffee and me, we don't get along. Okay. And for me, I build one-to-one previews. Now I'm going to show you kind of where that is, but I build one-to-one previews because I might be zooming in a lot, especially portraits, headshots. I'm checking focus. So I want to build those. Now it's going to take a while to build those out, and it's going to kind of run your computer. But once they're built, when you sit down to edit, it's going to be faster. Okay, so you kind of have a choice. You can build smaller previews, but then during the edit session, it's going to take more time if you zoom in to rebuild the previews versus doing it all at once and then they're just there. Okay. The other thing for on import, adding to collections, keywording, making sure they're going to the right folder. Those are also going to save you a lot of headaches later. Just make sure if you have a keyword structure, use it. If you have collections that you use it all the time. It's going to make your life finding it, in a month when you have to go back and find those photos. It's going to make it much easier if you've keyworded, if you've collectioned. So for me, I have collections like to print. I have my entire Voyeur series. I have a trip on there. I have I shoot Christmas ornaments. They all go into a collection. I've been going and doing some 2011 re-edits. Okay, so I keep collections as a way to kind of loosely group photos. Okay, and you can do that on import as well. And that's just going to make your life a lot easier. Yeah. All right. So then let's talk backup. Are the questions so far? Are we making sense so far? Okay. So let's talk backup. Now, let me preface all this by saying I take a lot of photos. I take a lot of photos. On average, let's see how many photos we've taken. In 2020, I've taken almost 78,000 photos. Nope, there's some of them are on my other drive. I've taken about 83,000 photos this year so far. Okay, I'm guessing that's more than most of y'all. So 1,000, more than 1,000 photos a week, 2,000 photos a week. That's kind of a slow year for me. Usually it's more like 4,000 to 5,000 photos a week. So that being said, this is for me. This is what works for me, but I'll tell you why I made the choices I made. So the first thing I do, cards, right? SD cards or CF cards, plug them into my computer and I import from the card through Lightroom. Lightroom copies the files from the SD card to the local drive. And then if there's a secondary drive attached, I have them write them all at the same time. So one source, and they're getting copied over. They're not getting deleted off the SD card, okay? So the SD cards stay in, look, I have two little, these are all my SD cards. Can y'all see those? All right. So I have, the white ones are good to go. The orange ones are still in production. So I don't reuse these cards until they're backed up and delivered to the client. But I have a lot of SD and CF cards. There's probably 15 in each of these, okay? So orange is hold, clear is ready to go. Okay. So that's kind of a second local copy for me, is that they stay there just in case a hard drive fails. So before I deliver them, they stay, I don't use them for anything else. All right. Okay. So everything goes in my local drive to a fast drive. Once the import is done, I drag the file up into Google Drive. I have unlimited storage with Google Drive through Google Suite. And all of our RAWs just go there by the same date and file. So I'll show you that. Did I close? Apparently. Oh, no. Well, no, I won't. Haha. So look, we can go to my Google Drive. I go to photo backup. So I just have a whole folder called photo backup, and I have everything from 2013 on. Click on 2020, and there's all the date folders. So for every date that I shot, there is a raw. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of them. Okay. And then they're all subfolders. So all the finished JPEGs go into one subfolder. All the RAWs are just in the main folder. So there's a whole bunch of RAWs files. Really exciting. I know. So everything goes there. So before I start editing, it's all backed up into the cloud, and I have my local copies on my hard drive, and then I have a backup copy still on the SD card sitting on my desk, and I don't use that card for another shoot until it has been delivered to the client. Okay, so those are my local backups. So I do all my editing off my local internal SSD drive, and then once I export them, they get uploaded to the Google Drive folder. Right, they go back into the subfolder, and then they also go to Zenfolio. So nobody touches my Google Drive except me, and for the clients, they all get it from Zenfolio. Okay, and that way there's no intermingling of internal facing files and external facing files. Okay, but it's also a secondary backdrop. So all of my JPEGs are in two places. Okay, one's in Google Drive, one's in Zenfolio, same files. Okay. And then once everything's been uploaded and I've checked everything, I delete them off my local drive. So if you were to go to my Lightroom, see all these grayed out, see how they're grayed out. So the file structure is still there and the previews are still there. And so if I wanted to download that folder again, I could just point it to it and let it know that it's back. But only the ones that have this kind of like, that look normal are actually on my local drive. Everything else has been deleted off my local drive because, again, I shoot a lot. There's just no way for me to house that many photos locally. I tried, okay? I'll preface it by saying I tried doing it that way. And in 1 year, I bought 18 hard drives. And I just got really tired of buying hard drives and labeling them and trying to find them out. The other thing, and I'm sure y'all hear them on our streams, is that I have 2 small children. And they're in the room with me right now. And I'm a klutz. I didn't trust myself not to spill a hot tea. I didn't trust myself not to spill Big Red. I didn't trust myself not to like start a fire and burn down my hard drives. So it just becomes, Colton wants to say hello. Oh, you keep talking. Okay. Colton's also our intro voice to our podcast. So if you're wondering whose voice that is my oldest son, Colton. So yeah, I just don't keep a lot locally. I had 2 Synology NOSes and I filled them up in like 6 months. And that got to be very expensive because I spent like $1,500 each on them by the time I bought the enclosure and the hard drives. I shoot so much. And so again, a lot of what I'm saying is for me, but I'm high volume. There's also some other dependencies, right? So one of them is connection speed. I'm on gigabit internet and I'm hardwired. I'm running the reason my office is where it is because this is where the internet comes in the house. And so I'm running gigabit Ethernet cabling from my desktop to my router, okay? Because I upload and download so much. It's important to me. The other thing that's important is on export, naming the files and the folders something that makes sense and doing that all the time. And one of the big reasons I like using Google Drive is the search is so good. So even on my phone, I can just open up my Google Drive app. I can search for the file name and I can get my files anywhere, anytime with an internet connection. And I like that instead of having to go dig in a bucket and find the external hard drive. So that's me. That's my workflow. I hope that made sense. I hope that helped. I know some people are going to question my no local storage on my drive of my files. I understand. I did try that route. It just didn't work for me. It got